Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the full council. Before I begin, can I please take this opportunity to remind members and officers and colleagues to turn their mobile phones to silent or ensure that when they're addressing the meeting, they speak directly into the microphone, ensuring that the red light is on. Before we start, I'd like to thank a welcome return for Carol, who's been away from us for some time, but welcome back, Carol. We go on to agenda item 1 to ask member services to report the apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from councillors Mrs Bly, Booth, Marks, Maul, Mrs Mayor, Mockett, Sutton and Wicks.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes from the meeting held on the 3rd of October 2022 that showed on pages 3 to 10 of the agenda pack. I would like to move the approval of those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bowden. Thank you. If members have any comments, please raise their hands. No, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, the information you will find it on page 11 and 12 of the agenda pack are the civic engagements attended by both myself and the vice chairman. Agenda item 4, to receive announcements from the chairman of the council and or the head of paid services. Thank you. I would like members to invite members to join the paying tribute to Fenland District Council in respect of Ray Griffin and Norman Topless, who very sadly passed away. Ray was a Conservative councillor for the Waterleys ward of Wisbech from May 2007 to 2011. During this time, he served on licensing committee, overview and scrutiny panel. And Norman began his career in local government in 1962. In ensuing years, pursued his career in finance at Peterborough City Council before joining Fenland District Council in 1974. Whilst here, Norman fulfilled the roles of Deputy Treasurer, Treasurer, Director of Finance and Administration, and ultimately the Chief Executive from 1993 to 2002 when he retired. Our thoughts and condolences are with Ray and Norman's families. I would like to invite you to join in a 2-minute silence in their memory. Thank you. Before we move on to the substantive items in today's agenda, I would first of all like to thank everyone who was able to attend and support the carol service that took place on the 2nd of December. It was well attended and an enjoyable event, a wonderful way to commence the festive season. I'd also like to thank the Deputy Lord Lieutenant, Mark Knight, the Mayor of Whittlesea, their Councillor David Mason, the Mayor of Chatteris, Linda Ashley, and our own Chief Executive who did the readings at this service. I'd also like to thank the Chatteris Community Choir, the Kingsfield School Choir, and the soloist Claire Grant, who all performed magnificently. And last but not least, thank the Vicar, Wendy Thompson. The service was an excellent planned and assisted and supported event, with our own member services being part of that organisation. So that concludes that one. Moved on to agenda item 5, to receive declarations of interest under the local code of conduct and any interest under the code of conduct in planning matters in respect of any item to be discussed at the meeting. If there are any, Claire, will you please raise your hand? No hands raised, thank you. Agenda item 6, to receive questions and provide the answers to the councillors in relationship to matters which, in the opinion of the chairman, according to the provisions of 8.4 and 8.2. There have been no written questions submitting in accordance with 8.6. It therefore proceeds to questions under 8.4. Councillor Cornwall, you may wish to ask your questions of the leader. The allotted time for this is 20 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and keep within the 20-minute limit. First of all, welcome two new members of my group. I didn't realise that we'd multiplied, but you're more than welcome, folks, anyway. Right, these are quite straightforward questions anyway. I see from our sadly much depleted local media that our colleagues in East Cambridgeshire have managed to get some £2.3 million from the somewhat dormant Cambridgeshire Horizons for some of its projects. I wonder if we've made any applications. Have we had much money from Cambridgeshire Horizons? Or if not, why not? You know, if East Cambs can do it, anything they can do, we can do better.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, on the subject of your two new members on your group, you will remember from school days when you had only a small group of individuals who were friends, and then you had a much larger group. Sometimes the larger group had to lend a couple of people to the smaller group just so that it evened things up just a little bit. And we didn't want you all to feel too lonely on that side of the room today. So we thought it was a nice gesture for Christmas. So far as Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited is concerned, I can honestly say, instrumental in ensuring that the monies which had been lying there unused for the best part of 9 years were made available to the constituent councils. And I was also the individual who proposed the way in which those monies would be distributed, which was, I can say, quite favourable as far as Fenland District Council was concerned. So we received some, from memory, £3.35 million in total, of which 1.05 million will need to be paid back to the Department for Transport over the next 25 years, but some 2.3 million or so is made available for various specified objectives which are consistent with the objectives of the company Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited. So we ended up in exactly the same position that East Cambridgeshire District Council ended up.
And we're very pleased to see that, but why should they get the publicity? Anyway, I have very recently, like in the last 2 days, would you believe, been approached by a number of the ex-members of the old Fenland Tourist Board, who point out that since the board was disbanded and the whole subject was supposedly included in Fenland's creativity and cultural strategy, sorry, I need more tea, from February 2021, little seems to have happened on the tourism front. Could you indicate when something tourism-y is likely to happen? Or is the council's line that the industry itself is required to take a lead in re-establishing a wide partnership arrangement? In fact, I suppose while I'm asking that question, I would add, is it about time that we actually had an update on that strategy as well?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Cornwall managed to get 2 questions in there, so I'll answer the first one. Why did East Cams get all the publicity? Well, we are not in the habit in this council of necessarily always putting out and pushing out publicity, which I have to say some members of the authority might think is in any way party political. We achieved what we needed to achieve. There was no need for us to publicise it widely. All we will do is to make sure that we spend the money and spend it wisely. So far as the Fenland Tourist Board is concerned, you are quite, Councillor Cornwall is quite correct that not much has happened recently, but we've had COVID, and COVID rather put a stop on a whole host of things to do with tourism over the period of 2 years and more. So yes, there will be more which will be done in COVID. It will need to be done in cooperation with the existing providers of tourist services within the area. It's not going to be imposed on people at all. So there will be progress on that, but I'm sorry to say the reason you've seen very little change over the last 2 years is just because of COVID.
Yes, Chairman, I think the question has come about because there has been a resurgence of activity in that particular industry. And I think they're beginning to say, well, what is going on? And isn't it about time we saw something? You know, I mean, there has certainly been a resurgence, and maybe that resurgence really should be matched in some way or other to show that we are, as an authority, trying to help them recover lost ground and, if you like, help that resurgence in the wider tourism. You know, we're not just talking about a narrow stream here, because these inquiries have actually come from a number, which makes me think that somebody's been doing some talking somewhere along the line, and let's have a go through mine. But there we are. Yeah, I've asked the question, but
Does that conclude your questions, Councillor Cornwall?
it does indeed, Chairman. I managed to get them in the 20 minutes.
Well inside the 20 minutes. I wouldn't expect anything else from you.
More astonishingly, Chairman, I managed to get my answers in 20 minutes.
Well, that's true, Councillor Bowden. That's very true. We move on to agenda item 8, Treasury Management. No, sorry. Agenda item 7. I'm jumping the page. To reserve reports and questions to cabinet members and portfolio holders' responsibility in accordance with rules 8.1 and 8.2. In accordance with rule 8.1, members can find the portfolio holders' briefing reports on pages 13 to 62 in the agenda pack, and procedure 8.2 permits questions of cabinet members about any matter that falls within their portfolio holder responsibility. And reminded the total time for this is 1 hour. Pained expression from Councillor Cornwall. Does anyone wish to ask questions? Councillor French.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a question for the leader. I've heard that the Combined Authority Mayor will be bringing in a council tax. Is this true? And if so, do you have any indication on the value?
Councillor Bowden.
The Combined Authority Mayor has a legal power to introduce a precept rather than council tax. Comes to the same thing at the end of the day, I suppose. And certainly there has been discussion and suggestion that because of the Combined Authority Mayor's failure, and he's the only Combined Authority Mayor to have failed to do this, to have received any bus money from central government last March in at April, in the 2 rounds of monies which were given out at that time, that obtaining money directly from local residents in the form of a precept could be a way for moving forwards. We've yet to have any firm indication that that actually will take place. We've also yet to have any indication about how much that will be. And I think it would actually be harmful to speculate at this stage about how much it would be. But I have to say that at this time, when so many people are struggling to make ends meet, when you have inflation at the level that it's at, when you've got heating costs going through the roof, the last thing that people want is yet another tax to appear on their council tax bill. So I personally deprecate the suggestion that it may be necessary, or the mayor may consider it's necessary, to go ahead with issuing a council tax precept. The previous mayor, James Palmer, didn't ever find it necessary to use that legal power. And I'm very, very unhappy indeed at the prospect that we may see a council tax precept from the CPCA mayor, which all of our residents will have to pay.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Warwick. Councillor Tierney.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Warwick. Now, how best to answer this one? So I think probably the aspiration is to do that. What I'm hearing from various bodies that I sit on, from various people that are speaking about it, is that I think we have to be, if we're being fair with them, the biggest aspiration of those the group in control of County Council, which are Labour, Lib Dems, Independents, the Rainbow Coalition, the biggest thing for them is fighting global warming. It seems to me that's their main focus, and it doesn't seem like there's any price that is too great to pay. And one of the things they seem to want to do is to very strongly clamp down on cars. Now, I've been on some of the groups about this in the Cambridge area, very upset about it, very angry about it. You can understand why, because it's a cost just to travel in and out of your house every single day, to travel in and out of your work every single day, and a cost that affects the most vulnerable and the people least able to pay it more disproportionately. And there is talk about doing something similar or the same at this end of the county. And when in the past I've heard these rumours, they've almost always become true. They always came forward. So it's too early to say exactly what their proposals might be, but there are certainly papers suggesting right now on some sort of car control or taxation they feel is necessary. And I think fair to say I would certainly oppose it. And I hope this whole council would unite against such a proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Hay.
Can I just say, I was at the Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny last week, and we had a report come before us for the bus review that so far has taken 4 years, that originally we were told would take less than a year. That just goes to show the inefficiencies of Combined Authority. But as part of that bus review, they are looking at congestion charges. And I was told afterwards by the officer from the Combined Authority that they feel they won't get any funding from central government unless they include congestion charges. I don't believe that that is a true statement. I believe they're using it as an excuse. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor.
Are there any other questions for portfolio holders or the leader? No.
Thank you, Chairman. Over the last 7 years, whilst I've been a member of this council, I've noticed that the report which comes every year of the mid-year review of the investment strategy and of the treasury management strategy is one of the most exciting and welcome reports to come forward, and it produces the greatest amount of energy, enthusiasm and interest. So I will limit the amount of time I spend speaking about it, expecting large numbers of questions from interested members of the council. Most important thing is this year, as was the case last year, I have to say, the council has undertaken no additional borrowing at all. So the total amount of borrowing that we've got has once again gone down. It's not anticipated that we will borrow any money at all in this financial year, as things currently stand. It is assumed in the papers that we have in front of us that there will be some element of borrowing needed over the 3.5-year period up to the 31st of March 2025, but that in itself very much depends on some of the decisions that we make about this council, what it does and how it organises itself. Now, it is not something which I'm going to claim any credit for at all, but it's not surprising that our investment income has been significantly greater in the current financial year than we had anticipated in the budget for this year. And that's because, as we all know, interest rates are a lot higher now than we anticipated they were going to be when we set the budget back in February. However, what happens is that our officers work extremely hard literally on a day-by-day basis to identify the best location that we can place the cash that we have available to us. And they've done so extremely successfully. We had a budget figure for the current financial year of £100,000 for investment income. We're now anticipating we'll actually get 500,000 in the year, an improvement of 400,000. Just in the first 6 months, we managed to get 164,000. So a lot of work was done by officers to ensure that that money which we've got, and we've got a lot of money because we're careful about spending it, but a lot of work was done to ensure that every penny of that earned as much money for us as it possibly could. And that is a real positive to be on target now towards £500,000 of investment income. When I first came onto this council, I was very surprised to see the residual debt that we were carrying over from many years ago, from quite a number of administrations ago. And it became clear to me that the reason we had such debt still outstanding was it was borrowed at such rates that it was uneconomic for us to buy it out. It was not economically viable to reschedule that debt. Now, as you'll all know, the whole of the yield curve has shifted higher over the course of the last 6-8 months. And it now means that we are within sight of possibly being able to reschedule one of those two remaining outstanding debts that we've got on long-term high interest rates. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. We'll be watching carefully how the money markets change. And if they change in a certain direction, which makes it prudent and successful for us to make a change, we shall do so. Otherwise, I'm sorry to say, we'll continue to have those two old debts outstanding on our books for quite a number of years still to come. So the overall position, Chairman, is that officers in particular have, on a day-to-day basis, managed the resources that we've got as effectively as it's possible to do. And we are in a much stronger position now in terms of the income that we've got this year from investments than we ever thought possible, only back in February this year when we set the budget. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for the report, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Connor. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Connor, or to reserve the right to speak on the summing up?
Yeah, I'll reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. The now item is open for debate. No hands raised. Councillor Connor, do you wish to add something?
No, Chair, I think it's all been said. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden, do you wish to sum up?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, members. The recommendation on this item is on page 63 of the agenda of the full pack. Is it agreed? Thank you. We now go on to agenda item 9, the report found on pages 73 to 88 of the agenda pack, and it's FDC's formal response to the Fens Reservoir consultation. I call upon Councillor Bowden to present the report. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't wish to take away from my colleague, Councillor Laws, whom I think will be likely to propose on this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the matter that I want to bring to our attention is just, this is a great project, the Fens Reservoir project, and I think we really need to embrace it. But the consultation response is correct and accurate in my opinion. I filled one in myself many weeks ago that covered some of the salient points, but probably in not such an educated way as the officers managed to do for us. I also agree with the letter and the way that Fenland District Council is embracing this. But the one thing that I want to stand up and say that concerns me about all of this is the word potential. So this is a fantastic project with a lot of potential. And Anglian Water in their documentation talks about the potential. There's potential for water sports. There's potential for a meeting place. There's potential for biodiversity and cycle lanes, etc. And that'd be great if we get all that. But what worries me is whether their main interest is delivering a reservoir with potential, and it's up to somebody else to find the other bolt-on bits. So I think that we have a fantastic opportunity here, but I do think that it's up to us as local members to keep an eye on that potential and find a way that it gets delivered. And something we need to explain to Anglian Water as we move on that journey together is, yes, you may be thinking about this as regards to it might be somebody else, but we very much feel that it's part of an entire package and one goes hand in hand with the other. So great to work with them, great to try and deliver this, but we need it to get every single ounce of additionality on top of the core purpose of the reservoir. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to endorse everything that Councillor Count has just said. I think we all have to realise that this is an epic project coming to Fenland. This is, Councillor Bowden said earlier today, I hadn't realised this, that this is the largest public works project since the draining of the Fens. I mean, that's just astonishing. And the benefits, not just for the security of water, but if all of the leisure facilities come true as promised now, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be absolutely amazing. A draw for the whole area, a huge benefit for everywhere in Finland, but most particularly the local area. And I just think we should all be applauding it and doing everything we can to make sure that what we end up with is just as good as what we're promised at the start.
Councillor Cornwall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the thing that attracts me in particular is that in actual fact, for many, many years, many people have been saying that why do we waste so much water each year, right, by stuffing it out to sea as soon as we get any quantity down. This actually satisfies those comments, because actually my understanding is that the water that is going in the reservoir is water that's handled by our superb drainage system anyway. So we are actually reusing it. I'm not that keen on Cambridge having it, but then that's another story. I'd rather it was sort of kept up here. But seriously, I think it's an incredible project. As you said, I think quite rightly, it seems to be the biggest one since the drainage of the Fens. But it's these spin-offs. Yes, I actually agree with the previous speakers, unusually probably, but I do, that it's inherent on us, I think, to make sure that this whole package goes along together, that we don't get one bit delivered by one and one bit delivered by another and so on. We drive the whole thing along as the project develops. so that rather than potential, it's fact, we get them, you know, and we also have a say in what there is there. I mean, one of the things I notice from some of the other installations that Anglian Water has, the other reservoirs, is car parking is a headache at some of them, because people have got to travel to them. Now, if we can get these spin-offs of cycleways and use the rivers and all that, absolutely fantastic, but it goes as part of that package. We are looking at the package, and I think that's inherent on our responsibility now to make sure that complete package goes ahead.
Thank you, councillor Cornwall. Are there any more questions? Councillor French, you wish to?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I totally agree with all, excuse me, all the speakers. I attended a flood meeting this morning. Anglian Water and Middle Level were there, and I asked the questions about the hundreds of thousands of money that's used for electricity to pump the fens up to St. Germans. And the question I asked, would they be looking to work together so that that water, especially in the 40 foots and 16s and 20s foots, will it be actually pumped into the reservoir? And the answer is yes, they're working together. So hopefully it will save Middle Level some money. And part of the consultation, the discussions today, Middle Level are actually spending £24 million investing in Finland. So it's absolutely superb.
Thank you for that, councillor. Councillor Bowden, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Jim. What a difference there is in the debate that has been here compared with the debate going on about the other so-called Fens reservoir, which is being proposed at the moment by Anglian Water. You may not be aware that this debate about where there should be new reservoirs has been going on for a full 2 years now in detail by Anglian Water. They started off with over 70 potential sites. It was cut down to 36. Gradually it came down to 4 or 5, and finally to the 2 which are now being proposed. And I can tell you that we in Finland fought very hard to get one of the reservoirs here in Finland because we could see the potential value that it could have to us. You look at the other reservoir which is being proposed as part of this scheme in Lincolnshire, and you see this astonishing amount of local opposition to the scheme which is coming forward, with literally thousands of people signing petitions opposing it. The difference between what's happening in Lincolnshire and what's happening here in Finland is stark. And yes, we have, again, the word potential, which Councillor Count mentioned, we have some superb potential here, and it will be incumbent on all of us and our successors to ensure that that potential actually is realised. But we don't have to wait until the reservoir actually becomes operational before getting value from it, because literally hundreds of direct jobs and many hundreds of indirect jobs will be secured by the proposal for our reservoir, and many of those jobs will be very skilled, in short supply at the moment, and will involve individuals getting highly transferable skills for the future. It gives us a great opportunity to get local jobs for local people, to skill people up, reskill them if necessary, skill them from school if necessary, in order to ensure that those jobs do come, as they undoubtedly should, to local people. Now, that involves working with the CPCA in particular, which has a large training budget to achieve exactly this sort of thing. And we've already started discussing with the CPCA what is going to be required to ensure that those jobs come to us. And you have individuals who will be trained up to do jobs which they'll then be able to do for the rest of their lives. But more than just that, of course, you have the indirect effect that this is going to have on the supply chain. And in a whole host of different ways, this is going to have a significant positive financial effect on Finland, starting in the fairly near future, just in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, as Councillor Tierney said, this is the largest infrastructure programme that there's been in Finland since the 17th century when the fens were drained. And just to put it in context, the cost of what is being proposed for our reservoir is just about the same as the cost of the A14 extension, which has recently been built from the A1M to Cambridge. It's that amount of money which is involved. It is a massive program. It's a massive investment into our area, and it can have massive spin-offs, not merely in the long term, which we've got to protect, but also in the much shorter term, where it can make a real difference to the lives of our children, of our residents, and of our local communities. So I believe that this approach that we've got, which is mentioned in the agenda item here today, is the appropriate one for us to follow, Chairman, and I heartily endorse it and recommend it for unanimous approval. Thank you.
Members, the recommendation on
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully everyone will remember back in July, I brought a motion to the council, and I just want to reiterate how proud I was that we got such a cross-council support for the motion. I know that we don't all agree on everything all the time, but we did agree this time on a direction of travel in regards to how we would deal with the challenges that are coming forwards and that people are concerned about. And what we focused on, what we said we would focus on, is things that could actually be achieved, things that were real, that would actually have an effect, things that were cost effective and things that would deliver for the people of Fenland, rather than kind of the virtue signalling you might see elsewhere, the bloated plans that can never be afforded. We focused on what we could actually do to make a real difference. Now, the officers have taken that, and this paper that has been produced has brought that into life, if you like. And again, thank you to officers for taking such a clear steer from council. Hopefully you've read the paper and you can see that it follows exactly the trajectory that we set, which is to focus on what will make the people of Fenland have better lives through cleaner and safer environment and mitigating pollution wherever we can in an achievable way. And I do commend the paper. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Bowden. You wish to speak now, Councillor Bowden, or do you wish to reserve the right?
I very much welcome this paper that we have in front of us, but how does it differ from what we see some other councils having done, some of them being quite local councils? And it differs in a very significant way. And that is, what we are talking about here is making changes which are not merely deliverable, but which are quantifiable. And we are measuring what we are trying to do in order to achieve the objectives which we are obliged to achieve by law. You compare that with what a number of other authorities, not a million miles away from here, are doing, where they are producing papers which are not quantifiable. They have no means of quantifying the cost effectiveness of what they're doing, and they are not prioritizing the different strands of work which they proselytize. So I think that our approach is in fact a far better approach than the ones that we see in some of our neighboring local authorities, and for that matter with the combined authority, because it allows us to work out how we can manage to afford to do what we can do, and by measuring the cost effectiveness of it, to prioritize different opportunities that we've got. So the work which has been done by Councillor Tierney and by officers in ensuring that we have a mechanism which allows that motion that we passed in July to take effect, I believe has been done very well indeed, and I'm very happy to second this. Thank you, Chairman.
It's now open for debate. Anyone wish to ask questions? No. Councillor Tierney, would you like to sum up?
Just thank you very much for taking the time to read the paper, and if you've got any questions, you can always approach me afterwards. Always willing to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, the recommendation is on page 90 of the agenda pack and is for the full council to approve the draft climate change action plan and the associated amendment in Appendix A of the consultation, and to delegate responsibility for reviewing and updating the plan to officers in consultation with the portfolio holder with the responsibility of the appointment. Is this agreed? Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 11, polling station review. This report is related to polling station district and polling state places review and can be found on pages 101 to 142 of the agenda pack. I call upon Councillor Bowden as leader to propose the report.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. It's not the first time that we've seen a polling district and polling place review. And as ever, thanks have to go to officers for the amount of time and effort they put into this, including the careful consideration of the comments and responses which have been made by members of the public, which are detailed in Appendix B. We've ended up with a report in Appendix C, which gives new polling districts and, where necessary, new polling places to mark the fact that, of course, our ward boundaries will be changing in the elections in May next year. Unlike all the previous polling district and polling places reviews, however, we have an unusual situation, and that is the passage of the Elections Act 2022 means that there will be some regulatory changes. There are a number of them, and I don't need to go into detail, but we've yet to discover exactly how this will, in a practical way, change how polling stations will operate. It may be that we find that we need more individuals actually at a polling station working on our behalf. It may be that we find the space constraints that we've got will change. An attempt has been made within this review to ensure that we have allowed enough leeway for the recommendations which eventually will come from government to be able to be effected without any further change. And that is the reason why we have a recommendation delegating authority to the returning officer to make changes to the proposals we have in front of us at short notice, should it turn out to be necessary as a result of the advice that we get from central government about the way in which the Elections Act 2022 will actually be put into effect. So it just remains for me to thank all officers, but especially Anna and Elaine, who've put in a very large amount of work into producing this document. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone may have in any amount of detail they wish. I'd personally like to talk through every single ward, explain what we've done and how we've done it. But maybe not every single person shares my interest in this particular subject. But if anyone has a question, particularly about their own ward, but about anything to do with this, please do raise it. I'll do my very best to answer. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Tierney. Thank you. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Tierney, or reserve the right to in the sum up afterwards?
Reserve the right, please.
Thank you. It's now open for debate. Councillor Tierney, would you like to add your 5 pence?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden, would you like to sum up?
Happy to leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.